A woman walks into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom and says absolutely nothing, not a single word. The silence feels heavy, uncomfortable. At first, people think it's defiance, disrespect even, but they have no idea what's really happening. Because behind that silence is a story that will leave the entire courtroom and millions watching speechless. She stands before the judge, clutching a small envelope. Inside is $360, her last $360. Money meant to pay her own traffic fines, but she never used it for herself. Instead, she gave it away. Every dollar. To help a stranger's child, someone she had never even met. When Judge Caprio learns why she did it, the room falls silent again. But this time, it's not confusion, it's awe. Because sometimes the purest form of courage isn't about fighting battles or making noise. It's about giving quietly, even when you have nothing left to give. Her act of selflessness would go on to touch hearts around the world, a reminder that kindness still lives among us, that compassion can bloom even in the hardest circumstances, and that true wealth isn't found in money, but in empathy. Before we share what Judge Caprio said next, take a moment. If you've ever helped someone you didn't know, someone who needed it more than you, leave a comment below. And please, subscribe. Because stories like this, stories of kindness, courage, and compassion, are the ones we need now more than ever. Whether you're watching from Texas or Toronto, Sydney or Chicago, this story belongs to all of us. Because this isn't about parking tickets. It's about humanity. It's about selflessness. It's about the moment a woman with nothing left gave everything she had, and a judge with the heart of a teacher showed the world what real justice looks like. It is a hectic Thursday in April at Providence Municipal Court. Judge Frank Caprio is handling his afternoon caseload when he observes a matter that appears ordinary in the files, but will soon turn remarkable. Isabella Martinez, several parking tickets with overdue penalties adding up to $360, with a remark stating the defendant asked for consideration. The court hums with its usual afternoon activity, individuals sorting through documents, lawyers talking with their clients, and the constant flow of cases being addressed under Judge Caprio's just and caring direction. Precisely at 2:15 p.m., the bailiff announces the case, and something odd instantly grabs everyone's notice. A young woman in her late 20s comes to the defendant's table with a distinct poise. Her actions are measured, her stance self-assured. But there is something unique in how she watches the courtroom. Isabella Martinez has remarkable dark eyes that appear to notice every aspect of the scene around her. She is dressed formally in a plain navy jacket and carries herself with calm respect, but she navigates the room with a sharp perception. Someone who perceives the world in a distinct way. What immediately stands out to courtroom onlookers is how Isabella's eyes continuously survey the space, not anxiously, but with the keen visual focus of a person who depends completely on vision to comprehend her surroundings. She places herself at the defendant's table with exact alignment, facing straight toward Judge Caprio's seat. Behind her is her older sister, Carmen, a woman in her 30s who repeatedly looks for Isabella to the judge with clear worry. Carmen holds a big bag and continues looking at her phone, evidently nervous about what will happen next. Before I reveal this remarkable instance of wordless interaction, let me pose a question. Have you ever considered what it would be like to move through a complicated legal process without hearing anything? Have you seen someone confront their anxieties with silent bravery? Tell us in the comments about instances when Isabella Martinez, The court clerk declares she is reviewing his documents while glancing at the defendant's table with mild uncertainty as he observes the young woman's uncommon focus on visual signals instead of auditory ones. Isabella stands up smoothly, her gaze instantly connecting with Judge Caprio's face. She walks toward the bench with assured strides, yet her total quietness introduces a surprising strain in the court. Judge Caprio gazes down from his seat with those knowledgeable, empathetic eyes that have witnessed all forms of human hardship. But Isabella's utter motionlessness and strong visual concentration establish a completely fresh atmosphere in his courtroom. Judge Caprio states in his typically friendly voice, but Isabella does not reply. Her eyes stay trained on his face with a focus that implies she is attempting to perceive something deeper than speech. The quiet continues for a few moments. People in the courtroom start to fidget uneasily, questioning whether the defendant is being rude or just anxious. Judge Caprio attempts once more, articulating more deliberately and distinctly, "Miss Martinez, can you hear me?" Again, no answer. Isabella keeps watching Judge Caprio's face carefully, but her silence builds a noticeable pressure across the room. Carmen, observing from the audience, starts to rise, as if to step in, but Judge Caprio softly lifts his hand, feeling that something significant is happening. "Miss Martinez," Judge Caprio says, now speaking straight to her and ensuring she has a clear view of his face, "are you okay?" She starts to gesture with her hands in smooth, elegant motions. Her fingers flow through the air with exact, purposeful movements that instantly disclose the reality. Isabella is using American Sign Language. The courtroom collectively pauses as everyone realizes at once that Isabella Martinez is deaf, and she has been attempting to lip read and express herself through signing the whole time. Judge Caprio grasps the circumstance right away, and his look changes from puzzlement to awareness. Shortly after, Sarah Chen, a qualified ASL interpreter, comes and places herself where both Isabella and Judge Caprio can see her. Plainly, "Ms. Martinez," Judge Caprio says with Sarah translating, "I am sorry for the misunderstanding. Please let me know how I can assist you today." And friends, if you are already sensing the strength of this instant, where obstacles are dissolving through basic human compassion, press that like button. Because what Isabella discloses next regarding her unsettled penalties will demonstrate a degree of altruism that will renew your belief in human kindness. With Sarah translating, Isabella's account starts to develop, and what appears is much more intricate and lovely than any person in the court could have foreseen. "Your Honor," Isabella signs with Sarah speaking her words, "I wish to thank you for your understanding and for supplying an interpreter. I realize I ought to have asked for one beforehand, but I was uncertain I was eligible for the assistance." Judge Caprio leans back in his seat, offering Isabella his full focus. The whole room grows quiet, sensing they are going to observe something remarkable. "Ms. Martinez, I notice here that you have several parking citations with outstanding penalties, adding up to $360. Can you assist me in comprehending your circumstances?" Isabella's hands start to move with growing assurance as she relates her story using sign language. "Your Honor, I am employed as a graphic designer for a small charitable group. My income is limited, but I adore my job because we produce learning resources for kids with impairments." Sarah's voice conveys Isabella's words with evident feeling as the narrative proceeds. "The parking citations are all from the city center near the Providence School for the Deaf. I offer my time there 3 nights each week instructing sign language to relatives who have deaf kids but cannot communicate with them." Judge Caprio bends forward instantly, grasping that this situation involves an individual who commits considerable time to assisting others in spite of her own difficulties. "That is extremely commendable, Miss Martinez, but can you assist me in understanding why these penalties have not been settled? Dates indicate some of these citations are a few months old." Isabella stops her hands, pausing as she gets ready to disclose something private and hard. "Your Honor, 4 months back, I found out about a family, the Rodriguez family, whose 8-year-old daughter Maria was born deaf. The mother and father had been setting aside money for a long time to register her in a special course that would provide her with intensive language growth and educational help.
But the program fee is precisely $360 each month, and the family was $60 below the amount. Without this program, Maria would... Isabel's eyes become teary as she signs her reply. Your Honor, I provided them the precise sum I had set aside to settle my parking penalties. I could not allow Maria to lose this chance because I made errors with parking meters. The court becomes totally respectfully silent as all present take in the significance of Isabella's selfless act. Sarah goes on interpreting.
I understand it was incorrect not to pay the penalties, but I continued thinking these are merely parking infractions. But Maria's language progress cannot be delayed. Every month she loses is a month she can never regain. Judge Caprio rises from his chair, clearly touched by what he is learning. Miss Martinez, you donated your penalty money to assist a child you hardly knew in obtaining education. Yes, Your Honor. In the deaf community, I recognize that linguistic growth is everything. A child with hearing acquires language naturally from infancy. A deaf child possesses only a brief period to build language abilities, and if we lose that chance, it is lost permanently. Isabella keeps signing, her dedication clear in her movement. Maria is flourishing in the program now. She is learning to read, to convey complicated ideas, to imagine her future. That meant more to me than evading parking fines. Judge Caprio poses the query everyone is considering. Ms. Martinez, if you donated your penalty money, how did you intend to settle these infractions? Isabella's reply shows the extent of her integrity. I was taking on additional freelance work on weekends and nights, attempting to recover the funds. It was progressing slower than anticipated, but I was resolved to settle my debt. She retrieves a folder from her bag and gives papers to Sarah, who hands them to Judge Caprio. These are records displaying the payments I have provided to the Rodriguez family, and this is my repayment schedule illustrating how I was generating income to cover my fines. I was not attempting to escape accountability, I was simply prioritizing a child's requirements. And everyone, if you are not entirely moved, Judge Caprio takes several moments to examine Isabella's paperwork, and as he reads, his look changes from judicial assessments to profound personal esteem. When he finally speaks, his words bear the significance of 3 decades of court involvement and the awareness that he is facing something genuinely remarkable. Ms. Martinez, he starts, making certain Sarah can translate accurately. In 30 years on this bench, I have never met anyone who gave up their own legal adherence to guarantee a child's academic growth. He stops, gazing straight at Isabella with deep regard. What you did was not merely charitable. It was a deed of comprehension that most individuals would never contemplate. You acknowledged that Maria's language acquisition could not be delayed, but parking penalties could. Judge Caprio goes on. You grasped something that many people fail to, that for a deaf child, early language exposure is not simply schooling, it is the basis for a whole existence of interaction and possibility. Isabella nods, tears flowing down her cheeks as she realizes that Judge Caprio genuinely comprehends the importance of her choice. Tell me about Maria now. How is she progressing in the program? Isabella's hands start to move with enthusiasm and pride as she describes Maria's advancement. Your Honor, Maria is reading at her grade level now. She is learning to read, to convey complicated ideas, to imagine her future,
Is forming friendships, joining in class conversations, and last week she informed her parents in flawless sign language that she wishes to become an instructor for deaf children. Sarah's voice conveys Isabella's feeling as she continues. Her parents have acquired sign language as well, and now their entire household can interact together. Maria is no longer secluded in her own home. Judge Caprio nods with profound comprehension.
And regarding your involvement with the Providence School for the Deaf, I have managed to assist 12 additional families in learning how to communicate with their deaf children. Some mothers and fathers travel for 2 hours to participate in my sessions as there is very limited assistance to be found. Judge Caprio rises and moves from behind his bench, coming near Isabella with the documents. Judge Caprio spends several minutes examining Isabella's paperwork, and as he reads, his look changes from judicial thoughtfulness to sincere personal esteem. When he finally addresses her, his speech bears the gravity of 3 decades in the courtroom and the awareness that he is facing something truly remarkable. "Martinez," he starts, making certain Sarah can interpret accurately, "in my 30 years serving here, I have never met an individual who set aside their own legal obligations to secure a child's educational growth." He stops, gazing directly at Isabella with deep regard. "Your actions were not merely kind. They represented a depth of insight that few would ever contemplate. You realized that Maria's language acquisition could not be delayed, whereas parking penalties could." Judge Caprio goes on, "You grasped a concept that eludes many, that for a deaf child, early access to language is not simply about schooling, is the essential base for a whole lifetime of interaction and possibility." Isabella nods, tears flowing down her cheeks as she realizes Judge Caprio genuinely comprehends the importance of her choice. "Tell me about Maria now. How is she managing in the program?" Isabella's hands start to move with enthusiasm and pride as she relates Maria's advancements. "Your Honor, Maria is now reading at the appropriate grade level. She is forming friendships, joining in class conversations, and just last week, she expressed to her parents in flawless sign language that she aspires to be a teacher for deaf children." Sarah's voice conveys Isabella's feeling as she proceeds. Her parents have also learned sign language, and now their entire family can talk together. Maria is no longer secluded within her own home. Judge Caprio nods with profound understanding. "And what about your work at the Providence School for the Deaf?" "I have been able to help 12 other families learn to communicate with their deaf children. Some parents drive from 2 hours away to attend my classes because there is so little support available." Judge Caprio stands and comes around his bench, approaching Isabella with what occurs right after Isabella's court appearance turns into a lovely illustration of how a single individual's selflessness can motivate a whole community to act. Isabella leaves the courtroom. She's met by several individuals who observe her amazing sacrifice and Judge Caprio's reaction. Dr. Amanda Foster, an audiologist who had been in court for another issue, stops Isabella and through Sarah's ongoing interpretation makes a remarkable proposal. "Isabella, I manage an exclusive audiology clinic and wish to offer complimentary hearing assessments and hearing device guidance for any relatives you assist. Your dedication for Maria ought to be amplified, not simply appreciated." James Wilson, a nearby entrepreneur who possesses multiple parking facilities in the city center, presents an additional amazing proposition. "Ms. Martinez, I am establishing designated parking spots close to the deaf school, particularly for helpers and relatives. Your parking issues are resolved, and so are those of all others who arrive to assist." Yet the most heartfelt reply originates from an unforeseen origin. Maria Rodriguez herself, together with her mother and father, who were reached by court personnel following Judge Caprio's public acknowledgement. 8-year-old Maria walks up to Isabella and in distinct, assured signing informs her, "Miss Isabella, thanks to you, I can express to my mother and father that I love them. Previously, I could only sense it. Now I can speak it." Isabella crouches to Maria's height, tears flowing down her cheeks as she responds inside. "Maria, you have provided me with more than I ever provided you. Observing you thrive makes everything meaningful." Maria's mom, Rosa Rodriguez, communicates via Sarah's translation. "Isabella, you preserved our daughter's tomorrow. We were unaware that lacking early language acquisition, Maria could possibly never have been capable of complete communication. You provided her the present of language itself." In a matter of days, Isabella's account circulates across Providence, and further, regional news features her, with Sarah translating, and Isabella employs the opportunity to champion for increased assistance. Area companies start providing reduced rates and assistance, especially for households coping with hearing loss, establishing a more welcoming community framework.
Half a year afterwards, Isabella has broadened her voluntary efforts from 3 nights to a formal part-time role at the deaf school, where she organizes family assistance programs. Each household I assist, Isabella signs, I recall that sensation of understanding a youngster requires aid and being equipped to supply it right away. That is what society ought to be. Prompt reaction to necessity, her manager states. Isabella has assisted more than 50 families manage the intricate realm of deaf schooling and assistance. She has turned into our most successful family supporter. And subscribers, this is what renders Isabella's narrative so impactful. She did not merely assist a single youngster. She found her vocation and changed how a whole community aids households encountering hearing loss. 12 months later, Isabella comes back to Judge Caprio's court, not for judicial problems, but for an event that gathers all individuals whose existences were affected by her amazing commitment. The court is packed with families from the Providence School for the Deaf, helpers, community figures, and the initial courthouse employees,
who observed Isabella's life-changing incident. Judge Caprio smiles broadly as he observes Isabella rise, with Sarah translating together with Maria Rodriguez, who is currently 9 years old and excelling in her studies and friendships. Isabella, Judge Caprio greets affectionately. It is wonderful to have you in my court again, though today you join us as our special honoree. Isabella communicates using sign language. Sir, the last 12 months have been amazing. What began as my shame over parking fines evolved into the most significant endeavor of my life. She motions to the full room. These parents stand for 50 kids who now receive language learning assistance because our city chose to assist them. Judge Caprio smiles with clear satisfaction. Please describe the scholarship established in your honor. The Isabella Martinez Language Development Fund has enabled 32 children to obtain early support services. However, the most important part is when Maria Rodriguez comes forward and, using assured signing with Sarah interpreting, speaks straight to Judge Caprio. Your Honor, since Mrs. Isabella assisted me, I can say that I wish to be a judge like you one day. I want to support others the way Mrs. Isabella supported me. Judge Caprio's eyes well up as he answers. Maria, any court would be fortunate to have a judge who understood fairness from Isabella Martinez. Rosa and Carlos Rodriguez come forward with their news. Your Honor, we have studied sign language and our entire household talks together now. But beyond that, we have become supporters for other households encountering the same struggles we faced. Isabella gives Judge Caprio a picture book recording the community improvements that followed her situation. Your Honor, these are images of the new Family Help Center, the volunteer parking initiative, the increased interpreter offerings, and the 12 new assistance groups for households with deaf kids. Judge Caprio reviews every picture with sincere astonishment. Isabella, a single generous act produced all this? Your Honor, I believe the generosity was already present in our city. My circumstances simply allowed people an opportunity to show it. Judge Caprio rises and speaks to the crowded court. Everyone, 12 months earlier, Isabella Martinez demonstrated that real justice is not only about obeying laws, it is about understanding when human kindness ought to direct our choices. He faces Isabella. You reveal that occasionally violating a minor regulation to achieve a larger purpose is not only permissible, it is commendable. Isabella, I have something unique for you. Judge Caprio gives her a formal city declaration. The city of Providence now proclaims this Isabella Martinez Day, honoring your selfless act for Maria Rodriguez and your continued work for households across our city. Isabella signs her reply via Sarah. Your Honor, each day ought to be a time when we place others first.
Isabella Martinez's tale reached well past Providence, turning into an emblem of how personal sacrifice can change whole communities and how genuine justice accounts for human necessity together with legal stipulations. 2 years following her,
Before her court date, Isabella was asked to present at the National Conference on Deaf Education, where she spoke to an audience filled with teachers, supporters, and officials with the same calm grace she had displayed in Judge Caprio's court. "When I gave Maria Rodriguez my fine money," Isabella signed to the attendees, "I wasn't aiming to be a hero. I was just answering an urgent need with direct action." Her talk earned a standing ovation, and 3 colleges gave her complete scholarships to continue advanced studies in deaf education policy. Judge Caprio, who watched online, later commented, "Isabella didn't merely assist one child that day. She showed that our justice system functions optimally when it acknowledges the distinction between technical infractions and ethical duties." The Isabella Martinez Language Development Fund has now assisted more than 100 children obtain early language services. Each family promises to aid the next family in sequence, establishing an ongoing chain of assistance. The Providence School for the Deaf has turned into an exemplary program, with groups coming from across the nation to understand their community-backed family services approach. Now employed full-time as the family advocacy coordinator for the school, Isabella keeps helping families manage the complicated realm of deaf education and services. "Every family I encounter," Isabella signs, "I recall being that individual who observed an immediate need and acted right away." That is what advocacy ought to be, removing the space between seeing a need and fulfilling it. The school's leader states, "Isabella has transformed how we assist families. Her method isn't solely about offering services, it's about creating communities where deaf children and their families feel appreciated and supported." And friends, Isabella's story shows us that heroism frequently appears as selecting another's pressing need over our own small inconvenience, that real communication occurs through deeds as much as language, and that occasionally the deepest effect stems from calm, steady service. We all are aware of individuals who give up for others without wanting acknowledgement. Write in the comments about a person who has motivated you with their selfless service or quiet giving. Isabella Martinez demonstrated that being a good citizen isn't only about obeying laws, it's about knowing when human kindness should direct our decisions. Judge Caprio's reaction to Isabella showed that justice isn't merely about penalty. It's about honoring those who quietly hold our world together, the teachers, the helpers, the everyday heroes who serve not for praise, but because it's the right thing to do. If you believe that true strength lies in kindness, if you trust that justice begins with compassion, then take a moment to like this video. Because every act of empathy, every hand extended in service, is what builds the kind of communities worth living in. Subscribe to Case Closed for more stories that remind us what real justice looks like. Not the kind written in law books, but the kind lived out in small acts of mercy and human understanding. Judge Frank Caprio
showed us that leadership isn't about authority, it's about heart. That justice isn't about punishment, it's about restoration. And that the quiet strength of compassion will always echo louder than the noise of power. So, let's carry forward his example. To see the good in people when the world only sees mistakes. To lift others when it's easier to judge them. And to believe that the law can heal as much as it holds accountable. Because when compassion leads, justice follows. And that's the legacy Judge Caprio leaves behind. A legacy of mercy, dignity, and a courtroom that reminded the world real justice has a heartbeat. If this story touched you, share it with someone who still believes in the power of doing good quietly. And remember, sometimes the greatest verdict isn't spoken from the bench. It's written in the way we treat each other.